today, Lord. Lord, be with the ones that are sick, that are not here. God, thank you for this day, just so that you can bless your name. We're thankful for the word through Monty, what he's going to say, and we supply it to our lives, Lord. We just ask this all in the blessed name of your son, Yeshua. Amen.
All right, so 2 weeks ago, we did our first presentation on where we're at. Oh, if I said something, I apologize. And what it was is I tried to explain the basic essence of the process of how I think, why I think, where I've got it from, how I learned it. It was all on video. If you guys want to step back, if you don't want to, that's fine. The thing is that this is the study that I talked to you guys about that I believe is very important. I met a man last week, and in meeting this man, he was talking about his Bible study, David, and all that. And he seemed like a very good Christian guy. And I just got into the subject of was talking about it, and I said, so what are you reading right now? And he started telling me, and I said, so what are you gaining from it? He said, well, I just read it and just do my thing, do a study. And I said, so what's your point of your study? What kind of insights have you got from it? He's like, what do you mean? And I can understand and relate to that learning method because for years, it's like I explained to him, I'd stopped studying, I stopped praying, I stopped all of it because, again, it wasn't dead, but it wasn't alive. Does that make sense? It's kind of like sometimes even how we feel. We're not dead, but we're not alive. We're just going through the motions. And I started asking him questions about his faith and about, little things. And honestly, it amazed me how little the guy knew, and he told me, he said, you've told me more in this last 30 minutes than I've ever seen before or even tried to understand before. And I was like, well, why do you think that is? He says, I don't know. He says, I don't know why we're not taught at that level. And the thing is that I don't understand why God has opened the doors here as He has. I have my theories, but it was just saddening when I would sit there and I would talk to the guy and I would try to communicate to him, and even to the point, David, where I told him about King James Bible. And he said, well, yeah. I said, so what was the first Bible he ever wrote? Or the first book he ever wrote? He didn't know. And I showed it to him, and you already seen his face. He's like, what? And I was like, think about that. And so we went off into the deeper conversations. See, Emily, if you got here early, you could fix the stupid computer. Oh, no, it's fine. But the thing is that, so now we don't have slides today, but I will have it taken care of next week. But we are into the studying of the word fasting. And the process of fasting. Last week we laid down fasting. So, out of memory, does anybody remember what fasting is? It's not Lance going to go get something. He's going as fasting as he can. What does it mean? What does it mean when you're fasting?
Like you're doing without.
Okay, that would be the surface understanding of it. Yes, truly, you're doing without. If you think about it, every morning, traditionally they didn't, but think about the name of the word. What do we do every morning if we're lucky?
Yeah, breakfast.
Wake up.
All right, we have breakfast. Problem is that we don't break down the word. overdo it.
Fast break.
No, it's not a fast break. That's again, getting away. But you're breaking your fast. There was a time that what they would do, they would abstain from food for a certain amount of time. A fast there's been medically proven that a fast is good for you. A fast actually helps cleanse you out. A fast, the coolest thing that I found to it was, spiritually speaking, it's been proven that when you eat a heavy meal, a lot of your blood is now circulating your intestines, your stomach, and that's what it utilizes in breaking down all the food and all that. The problem is that after a big meal, what do you want to do? Sleep. Because your mind is like, it's dull. Like my daddy years ago would tell me. He said, son, he says, whatever you do, he says, before we go hunting, he says, you never feed your dogs. I said, well, Daddy, why do you not feed the dogs before we go hunting? He says, because a full dog won't hunt. That dog has to be hungry. It's the same thing true if you're going to the deer woods. You don't eat that morning. Because why? Your mind subconsciously is already satisfied. You've already taken care of your necessities of the day. And so your mind is not sharp. But when you're hungry, you're in tune to everything. And so the thing is that when you're fasting like that, what happens is that your mind is no longer dulled, and the longer you go without eating, the more your brain honestly expands. That is talking from a physical perspective. A spiritual perspective is something completely different. How this happened is that a few weeks ago, I was just walking around and I kept on hearing God say, time to declare a holy fast. A holy fast. Listening to this phrase, fasting. So I knew it was time to break down this word fasting. We'll go in more depth next week, because next week I'll have the videos, and the videos can explain it even better than I do. I like using the videos for my perspective. The videos, it's quite one thing for me to tell you something means something. I'm just me. The problem is they say that a word is confirmed by 2 or more witnesses. When 2 people say something, now it's like you can testify all you want that, well, this is what Lance did to me, or but all of a sudden Artie says, yeah, he says, I seen that happen. Now it becomes a real thing. And so that's one of the reasons why getting this next setup is so important. One thing is I can tell you about this, if y'all remember, do y'all remember the disclaimer I gave y'all at the very beginning of all this? Well, heck no. Why would y'all remember that? The disclaimer I told you on this study is not going to slip by without opposition. If y'all remember that, I said this from the very beginning, and I told you, this study right here will change you. As an example, this study myself, I got heavily attacked this last week. And why? Because actually the week before, even shutting it down for the toilet, so we can try to figure out what that problem is. It's been everything. They're saying that nothing good happens without opposition. Anytime you're making a major change and a major move in a major direction, expect it. Artie has told his grandchildren, it's great. I'm glad you've become saved. Now comes the fight. And the problem is that the fight, we often associate it with the devil and Satan and demons. But you realize that's not the problem. It's really, the fight is not Satan and the devil and the demons. You realize that, right? And why? How can that be? Mathematically speaking, it's impossible. Well, it's not necessarily impossible, but it's highly improbable. And why I say that? Because how many are there?
Legion, we are many.
There's only one Satan. But he says they're a legion. Well, how many is in a legion?
Yeah.
Somebody Google, how many is in a legion?
20,000. Depends on who's legion, Roman legion or.
Well, you can pick up because again, he was speaking during Roman times. And see, I even explained it to the guy we was talking about it. I said, you know, the Bible is written in two parts. He said, what? It's written in two parts. I said, yeah, the Old Testament's Hebrew. The New Testament's Greek. I said, so you're interpreting Greek words and Hebrew words. So what is that?
Says the number of soldiers in the Roman legion varied over time, but generally ranged from 4,200 to 6,000. A typical imperial era legion had about 5,200 men.
So, now remember, he is using a word. All right, so as an example, my grandchildren ran up to me the other day and was talking, they said, what's the greatest number? And you know what my grandchildren said, David? Google. I said, Google's the search bar. Google's not a search bar, is it? It is a number representation, isn't it? What does Google represent?
100 to the 0 to 10 to the 100th power or something like that.
But it represents something. But if you don't know what Google means, like I didn't understand what Google means. So you think about this thing. Why do you think the demons said we are what?
Legion,
Why do you think he used that term?
because there are many.
Why do you think he used that term? It is a term they understood. Legion did not mean that they were an infinite number. Does that make sense? There's a specific number. And by that, what we just found out right now, you said what? 40,000? 20,000? And in reality, it's what? Between 4,000 to 5,000, right? So the thing is that, are we on the right track here? Does everybody kind of agree where we're going with all this thing? So basically what it is, if we go by the term that the very demon used to describe their number, we're dealing with a small amount. So the thing is that how can I back that up? He says, we wrestle not with flesh and with blood, but with what? Powers and principalities. Now, I'm kind of going a different direction, but it's important we go there. Powers and principalities. When Daniel was praying, the two angels appeared to him, and they said, we would have been here if it hadn't been we had to fight or contend with the prince of Persia. Now, when we think about that, so here we've got angels. So this first angel came down to answer Daniel's prayer. The angel in the Bible said that he met with opposition with the prince of Persia. And he couldn't overcome the prince of Persia. So he had to go back and do what? He had to bring help. He had to bring help. But did you notice he said he wrestled with what? One particular being, didn't he? Did he say that he represented or he wrestled with legions? Did he say that he wrestled with a bunch of people? Did he say he wrestled with his armies? Armies is mentioned in the Bible at a particular time. Persia had one assignment to it, and that was one. How can you back that up spiritually as well? Think about it in Revelation. In Revelation, he talks about these churches, and he says, I'm speaking to the angel of this church. In other words, if there are demons that are assigned principalities, then by all rights, because again, it's the same thing, in Revelation, he says, I speak to the angel of this area, to this zone. So in reality, we're wrestling with a very strong opponent, but yet a small, finite number. In other words, just a small number of authorities that have authority over a zone. So Billy, if you got, your boss gives you a territory, you're over, okay? And you got to represent this whole big territory by yourself. What are you going to do? You're going to what? you're going to have to say either I can't manage this stuff, so you're going to have to get what?
Help.
You're going to have to get help. The problem is there's only so many of you around. So what do you have to do? There's an old story. I've told y'all this story about the cow and the chicken. Tractor breaks down. It's time to put the crop in the ground, because if you don't get your crop in the ground by a certain amount of time, you miss that time, you're going to mess up downstream, because you're not going to have time for it to harvest. Just like I told David yesterday, our banana tree is going to have to really hurry if it's going to bear fruit this year. It ain't going to do it. Why? Why does tropical fruits not ripen here like they would down in Florida? Because the season is not long enough. Does that make sense? So here we are, this man, he had to get his crop in the ground. And the little boy worked with his daddy. I love this. There's a new brand out right now. It's called Farm Brand. It's Fathers Against Raising Morons. And so that's the whole brand. It's fathers becoming fathers again. And they're banding together and saying, hey, we're not going to raise morons no more. We're going to start raising boys. Well, again, it's about time that men become men again and start focusing on the families instead of what men wants to do. So here's the thing. This little boy looks up and says, Daddy, what are we going to do? Daddy says, son, what do we got?